The press conference was packed. Journalists from all over had gathered to hear the latest updates from one of the country's most controversial politicians, Senator Jonathan Hale. Hale, known for his stern speeches and conservative stances, had a large following, but his recent comments had made him a target for public scrutiny. Today, he was speaking at a charity event, discussing the importance of social responsibility, the value of community, and the need for moral leadership. Keanu Reeves, invited as a guest of honor for the event, sat in the front row, quietly observing. While he wasn't here to be the center of attention, he had always been interested in the intersection of celebrity and social impact. But as Hale took the podium, Keanu's calm demeanor shifted. The politician's speech began to feel more like a self-serving tirade than an actual call for action. "We need to restore moral values in our society," Hale said, his voice rising with emotion. "It's time to stand up for what's right, to defend traditional values and refuse to let the corrupt systems of modern politics take over." Keanu, sitting in the crowd, felt a pang of discomfort. Hale's words seemed hollow to him, considering the politician's recent history of personal scandals and contradictory policies. Keanu wasn't someone to start a confrontation, but he also didn't believe in letting hypocrisy slide, especially when it came from someone in such a position of power. He shifted in his seat, preparing to speak his truth if the moment presented itself. As Hale continued, Keanu couldn't help but notice the glaring inconsistencies in his words. The politician spoke about the importance of helping the less fortunate, of making choices that benefited the common good, but Keanu remembered the recent news reports that painted Hale as someone who had voted against numerous policies that would have benefited the very communities he now claimed to care about. "I'm tired of hearing about all the excuses that people make for not doing what's right," Hale continued, his voice full of self-righteousness. "It's time to put people first, to stand by the values that this great nation was built on." At that moment, Keanu stood up from his seat, interrupting the politician mid-sentence. The crowd fell silent, eyes immediately turning to him. The air in the room thickened as Keanu calmly addressed Hale. "With all due respect, Senator," Keanu began, his voice measured but firm, "I think you're confusing moral values with political convenience." The room went quiet. Keanu's words were not shouted in anger but spoken with an unwavering conviction. Hale's face tightened, clearly caught off guard by the interruption. "You claim to stand up for the poor, for the vulnerable," Keanu continued, his eyes now locked on Hale's, "but your voting record tells a very different story. You support policies that hurt the very people you say you care about. You talk about traditional values, but when it comes to real action, your actions speak louder than your words." The room was now fully engaged, the audience waiting to see how Hale would respond. Senator Hale, trying to regain control of the situation, chuckled nervously. "Mr. Reeves, I respect your work in the community, but I don't think you understand the complexities of politics. It's not always black and white. There are bigger forces at play." Keanu didn't back down. "Oh, I understand perfectly, Senator. The complexity isn't in the politics. It's in how you choose to ignore the people who need your help the most. You can't claim to be a man of the people while simultaneously voting against every bill that supports the underprivileged. That's not complexity, that's hypocrisy." The audience was now fully captivated. Hale stood there, speechless for the first time that afternoon, his carefully rehearsed speech unraveling before him. Keanu had exposed the truth that Hale had tried so desperately to avoid. His actions didn't match his words. The tension in the room was palpable. Hale opened his mouth to respond, but Keanu didn't give him the chance. "Senator," Keanu continued, "you've spent years pushing a narrative that supports the elite while pretending to stand for the people. But when it comes to actually supporting legislation that would benefit those people, you've been nothing but an obstacle. You call for moral values, but the real test of character is what you do when the cameras aren't rolling, when the public isn't watching. If you're so focused on morality, why aren't you doing what's right for everyone?" The crowd remained silent, the weight of Keanu's words hanging heavily in the air. Hale, now visibly shaken, struggled to respond, but the damage was done. Keanu had called out the hypocrisy that everyone had been too afraid to speak about. The politician had been exposed not by a loud confrontation or insult, but by the quiet truth of his actions, and his inability to defend them. Keanu turned to the audience, his voice softening. "I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to remind us that leadership isn't about what you say, it's about what you do. And if you're going to stand on a podium and call for moral values, you'd better be ready to back them up with your actions." The room erupted into applause, not for Keanu's fame or celebrity, but for the truth he had spoken so powerfully. The audience stood, some cheering, others nodding in agreement, while Hale stood frozen, his face flushed with embarrassment. Keanu's words had shattered the carefully crafted facade the politician had built, exposing the truth behind his rhetoric. Hale, now visibly flustered, tried to regain control of the situation. "I think we've heard enough from Mr. Reeves for today," he said stiffly, his voice lacking its former confidence. "I'll be happy to answer questions from the press afterward." Keanu, however, was done. With one last look at Hale, he turned and walked off the stage, leaving the politician to handle the fallout. As he exited the event, Keanu's quiet confidence left a lasting impression. The truth had been spoken, and there was no denying it. The world had seen the difference between a man of words and a man of integrity. If you want to see more stories where the truth exposes the facade, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications.